you have a team that, like you just kind of alluded to, you thought it might not be very good this year. Maybe you were kind of on the fence. Maybe you're just coming out of a rebuild. And you were like, oh, I have some pieces. Might compete this year, but I'm not really sure. You have some flexibility. And I don't know, maybe you've just gotten kind of lucky, won more games than you thought you would. Maybe you have some pieces like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Garrett Wilson, or just players that are scoring a lot more points than necessarily their market value implied that they would this year. And all of a sudden you're looking at your team, you're going, oh man, I'm not that far away. You might have a few firsts, you might have a few seconds. Who are like the top guys that you would try to buy on a contending roster? Maybe we'll split it in two categories. Like one would be potential real spends, like you're trading a first for this guy. And then other would be like cheap buys. Like if you're kind of half in where you're like, I wouldn't mind giving my lineup a little juice, but I don't want to like fully commit to losing a bunch of value here long-term.
So if I'm trading draft picks, what I'm looking for are young players to replace those draft picks. So like if I'm going to go and try to compete when I'm not really expecting to compete, I'm not going to trade my first round pick to go and get a 26-year-old running back. Like I'm not going to go trade for Dalvin Cook because that doesn't really make any sense. What I would do is probably go and try to upgrade at quarterback if it's super flex league. Like I'm always looking to upgrade at quarterback. I want to get into that elite tier. I want those 23 points per game players in both of my starter slots if I can get them. So if I can take my, say, Tua is probably not the best choice to be trading right now, but say my Joe Burrow, I got a whole bunch of Joe Burrows because we were too low on Joe Burrow last year. And then that was a huge win. And now we're sitting on all these Joe Burrows and thinking, gosh, we are far too high on Joe Burrow now. We need to move Joe Burrow. So if I'm sitting there and I got Joe Burrow and I got a plethora of draft picks, I'm going and shopping for Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. And I'm trying to move Joe Burrow into one of those higher tier positions. If I can get that done, that's great. If I can't, then whatever. We'll stick with Joe Burrow. I'm probably not going to invest in high, like old running backs, but I would be willing to go and splurge on a, what's his name, Breece Hall or someone like that, like where I'm quite confident they're going to be good and good for a long time. I feel like with Breece Hall, we are effectively paying for the insurance of whether or not he was good. Now we've seen him in the NFL; he looks pretty good, so I'm willing to just go all in on Breece Hall. And I feel
is he your clear-cut dynasty RB2? He's my clear-cut dynasty RB2.
Yeah, probably. I think there's a chance that, like I was saying this in the Discord the other day. I wouldn't be shocked if Breece Hall is the RB1 by the end of the season, because I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have he's not going to have a bad season, but he's not going to be the RB1 anymore.
Well, I think the RB1 in Dynasty by week 1 of next year is Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I meant by the end of the season. Like by the time we get to January, I could see Breece Hall being RB1 and Jonathan Taylor being like RB2. And
right, I think by January it's Bijan Robinson.
And then as soon as we get rookies into the fold, it's Bijan Robinson, and it's not close. Like I think people are going to go absolutely nuts for him, which is why 2023 is like the best year you can tank for. By the way, this is like it's funny to say, but 2014 had this bumper crop of players, and then 2017 had this bumper crop of players, and then 2020 had this bumper crop of players, and now 2023 has this bumper crop of players, and it's like every 3 years we get this huge class. So buy 2026 picks now. I honestly, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I wonder if there's anything to this. Like, is there something to like these older, like superstar players leave at these high, these like impressive schools, and then the next crop gets to play 1 year sooner, and that allows them to break out earlier and develop confidence and whatever, and makes them awesome. It's probably just coincidence, but like, it's too weird that it's been 4 now consecutive stretches of 3-year stints of excellent classes. It's weird. Anyway, Bijan's going to be the RB1 next offseason.
So I not completely. I mostly disagree with you. Here's why I disagree with you. Most teams with like elite young players probably don't want to sell them for picks unless you're handing them too many picks, because you already have the EYR if you're sitting on like a T. Higgins or Jalen Waddle or a CeeDee Lamb or a Breece Hall. So teams aren't going to just be like, yeah, I'll trade you my already really good young player for 1 first. They're going to make you pay the insurance of you not hitting on that pick. And I don't really want to do that because now I'm paying the most amount possible to get these points into my lineup this year. And all I'm doing to pay all that extra is ensuring my long-term value, which I could already just do. So sure, if I have like an egregiously high value team, like I've been taking for a while, like say I tanked out of the startup and I just like soaked value on a productive struggle and I'm like so far ahead of every other team, then sure, I want to buy the Breece Hall. But like otherwise, I think I'm probably going to the teams that are in the opposite position of me, who thought they would be good and aren't so good. And I'm saying, okay, what's the price on Devontae Adams? What's the price on Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, whoever is like the old dude that's not helping them much, Travis Kelce, whatever. And I'll see if I can spend for them, because at least that way it's like I'm just converting. I'm buying the maximum amount of points that I can this year for the least amount of cost. And sure, that's probably going to hurt later, but I think that's ultimately kind of the trade-off that you can make to get as many points into your lineup as possible without offloading a bunch of picks. But what I'd probably do even more than that is like, I'd probably try to poke around the edges a little bit and see, can I get a Melvin Gordon? Can I get a Devin Singletary? Can I get a Leonard Fournette? Can I get like these guys who aren't necessarily of all that much value to their owners, but kind of allow me to skate by? I mean, it depends on the team that you have. Like I have a team where I already have Kyler, I already have Lamar, and I have, kind of just not a thick enough roster between them because I'm sort of going for the pillars first and I'm sort of filling out the rest later. And I just kind of want like the cheapest points that I can buy. I don't know. In general, I feel like draft pick trades for elite young players don't really happen unless you just really overpay.
Yeah, you got to put something else with it. You can't just go offer 2 firsts for Breece Hall. You're going to have to do a first and something else for Breece Hall, more than likely. And it's got to be something attractive, like, I don't know, a first and Chris Olave and maybe that's not even enough. I'm not sure if that would get you a
right. It's like you almost have to sell a young asset that you don't fully believe in. Like this is something I've been trying to do. Is like I have like a lot of Dotson, for instance, because now he got hurt. It's a bummer, but I have a lot of Dotson because I didn't really like anybody that much at the 1-2 turn, and I didn't really like Dotson that much either. But he just like routinely fell into the early second, and I just felt like he was like a good value selection in the early second.
He was.
Because people were out here drafting like James Cook and doing ridiculous shit like that. So I was like, all right, I'll take Jahan Dotson if you're going to draft James Cook ahead of him. And so I have a bunch of Dotson, but I don't actually think Dotson's all that good. And then he played, and he's not actually been all that good, but boy, is he ever scoring touchdowns. And so people think he's really good now. They used to not think that. And so I've been looking at it, it's like, okay, can I use Dotson and be like, here's a young, attractive rookie for your young, attractive player, and I'll add a little bit. And maybe that other person is like, oh yeah, well, I'm not even downgrading, like I'm getting Jahan Dotson. He's really great. He's just underrated because he wasn't drafted as high. And, if you can turn Dotson, who, I still think could be good. Like, I don't want to say he's bad because he hasn't earned a bunch of targets in his first 4 games. That's fine. He could still be great. But where I think his value is a little bit inflated, add something to him and try to get somebody like a CeeDee Lamb or a Waddle or whatever else, but like somebody who's going to make more of a difference. That's a guy where it's like I would do Dotson in a first for Breece Hall if that's possible. You never know if that's possible or not. But
yeah,
I was able to swing Garrett Wilson straight for Breece Hall last week.
Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Actually, technically it wasn't straight. I was able to do Garrett Wilson and Khalil Herbert for Breece Hall and David Bell, but I feel like the Herbert Bell is like
basically straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing because I think when I'm trying to rebuild, I'm often taking someone like Jahan Dotson, who I probably drafted in the early second round because I have a lot of Jahan Dotson as well. And I don't love the prospect, and I don't think that he's been overly impressive as a pro thus far. So I'm like willing to move off of him with this value gain that he's already sustained. So now I'm looking at, well, what can I trade Jahan Dotson for? And for me, typically how I build my productive struggle is I get to a point where my team is so deep that I just literally don't have roster spots left. Like I can't go pick up a backup running back off waivers because I just don't have the space for it. My players are all like valuable per se. So then I'm just looking to trade like a Jahan Dotson and whatever else and going to get a star or like a superstar difference maker. If I'm in a situation where I'm not like overstocked with players and picks, and I was maybe trying to do like a fast rebuild where I didn't really take the time to accumulate the roster value that I would normally do, I would take it like a Jahan Dotson instead of trading draft picks for veterans. I'd probably take someone like Jahan Dotson and try to trade him for a veteran. Like, could you get Jahan Dotson for a Keenan Allen and maybe a little plus on top? Like that would be exciting to me.
Yeah,
I'm probably a lot more excited to do that than go and trade a first round pick for Keenan Allen. If that makes sense.
I did that one team. I did Dotson for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, like that's the kind of trade that I would be willing to do. And when you do these rebuilds, you like I cannot stress enough. You need all the draft picks. Like getting and you draft players that you don't like. It's okay. Players that you don't like still have impressive stretches of football.
Yeah.
And people rush out to best case scenario on the weirdest things, like say scoring 4 touchdowns on 8 catches. They're like, yeah, this
always comes
awesome.
back to the game. But no, I agree with you. Like here's my roster. So I fully blew up. I'm going to do this whole thread for the patrons about the process of my rebuild of my home league team because I think it'll be fun for the patrons to follow along. And Adam Harstad did this one time, and I don't know, I liked it, so I'm going to just copy it. And yeah, like this was my draft class this year because I just traded basically my entire team for 22, 23, and 24 picks. And I actually didn't even make all my selections because I traded out multiple times to get more 2023 picks. But like it was a total mishmash. I took London at the 1-2, which obviously is a guy that I very much like. And then I was able to get Traylon Burks, the 1-7, who was a guy that I wasn't drafting a ton of, but I would draft 100% of the time at the 1-7 because that's smash. And then yeah, it just kept progressing back. Kenny Pickett was there at the 1-12. I was like, I don't like fucking Kenny Pickett, but I'll take Kenny Pickett at the 1-12. And then the guy at the 2-1 is like, oh, I wanted Kenny Pickett. I'll give you a 24 second for the swap, the 1 slot, and you give me Alberto Quabenon. And I was like, that sounds great. And so I get a 24 second. And then I take Jahan Dotson there. I ended up taking Christian Watson in this draft, who I never take Christian Watson. I think I got him at the 2-3 or 2-4. And then I took Romeo Doubs, of course, in the 3rd round because he's the greatest player on earth. And then, because I had no roster spots left because I had traded off all these veterans. Oh, I took Rashad White, of course, too. I have just this horde of UDFAs. I have Treston Ebner, Jalen Warren, Isaiah Likely, Chigozie Okonkwo, Pierre Strong, Greg Dulcich, everybody, the whole gang. Tyquan Thornton. Yeah, just the whole gang. And then we'll do the same thing in 2023. And then that's the fun thing is you get to see which of these, especially in shallower leagues that people play in home and stuff, you don't usually get the opportunity to add 7 UDFAs to your roster after a draft, other than your first year of a rebuild. But you do when you don't have any players, and it's great.
Yep. Yeah, I guess the one other thing on rebuilding that I would say is be the first one to do it. Don't wait till the trade deadline.
There's a first mover advantage for sure.
First mover advantage because once everybody trades the things that you want, the draft picks, there's none left to trade for. You need to be the first one to get all the draft picks. And then on that topic, sometimes you're gonna take a little bit less of a deal than maybe market value just to get out of a veteran that could go to 0 and into something more stable. I have in one of my leagues, me and Ryan, my high stakes partner, we decided to tear down one of our teams and we had Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. We had a very strong team. Our team probably would have been a playoff team without question. And we just said, you know what? This team's going to fall off the cliff in a year or two. Let's just beat them to the punch. 2023 is a great year to rebuild in. Let's get rid of these guys right now. And we started trading off Mixon and Cook and so on and so forth. And we took a little bit less than what we normally would have wanted, if we were not intending to punt. But it was just a matter of, hey, you know what? If Dalvin Cook gets hurt right now, we may not get this in 2 months. If it was a younger player, say, I don't know, somebody that's good and young, prime aged, say it's like a Tyreek Hill, who's not that young, but he's like prime aged, or maybe he's a little old. Anyways, somebody who's like 26, 27 years old at a wide receiver.
Debo Samuel, let's say.
He had a Debo Samuel. Like, he could get hurt and not really lose that much value. But a 27-year-old running back like Dalvin Cook, if he gets hurt, it's going to be scary on the value front.
Game over.
So we took less than we probably should have gotten, but we're in a really good spot now. So yeah. Anyways.
All right. I think that'll do it.
I think we nailed it. Great job.
Yeah.
Great job, everyone. Matt.
Again. But there was a lot of more editing. I apologize to Matt. There'll be more editing, but I took notes on when the pauses were and when the mistakes were. So
in the comments to the podcast, if you guys want, just go ahead and let Matt know if you would like longer or shorter podcasts.
They're going to want shorter podcasts.
He can edit them to his desired length.
If you want them shorter, just listen to us on 2x speed.
There you go. Listen on 2x speed, and then Matt can just edit really long podcasts. It's gonna be great.
Really, really fast. 30 seconds last take. Is Romeo Dubs the prince who was promised? Are you ready to eat that L?
I'm eating it up. I'm eating up the L as we speak.
Yes. Yes.
It's like
we get to root for Dubs together now. You're joining the Wolf Pack.
Yeah, like honestly, buying Dubs in the 3rd or 4th round is like whatever. Usually I'm drafting running backs there. I'm not really interested in day 3 or wide receivers, but and then on training cap hype, he like rose to like 2nd round value, and I was like, well, you got to sell now. And then now though, he's pretty good and he's not really all that expensive. He's like a high 2nd round pick. I'm like, hey, you know what? If I was going to bet on an outlier, this is the kind of outlier I'd bet on. One tied to like a Hall of Fame quarterback with nobody else on the team, including Allen Lazard, who's awful. And it's like, this is like, he's 4 games into his rookie season and he has 2 consecutive 20+% target share games. Like, this is what we're looking for when we're trying to get an early mover advantage on an outlier. You sell on hype, but when they're actually doing something, feel free to buy in. Like, he could, like, don't get me wrong, he could still be Travis Fulgham. That's possible. But it's a lot more likely that it isn't Travis Fulgham, because Travis Fulgham was like in the middle of like his 2nd or 3rd year. This is the beginning of his rookie year. We have literally only have 4 games of Romeo Dubs thus far, and he's been pretty damn good in those 4 games. So yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. Buy some Dubs.
Let's do it. Okay. Last question. Would you officially rather have Romeo Dubs than Christian Watson in Dynasty?
Okay, this is not fair because you already said the last question was the last question. Now you're double dipping on last question.
Yeah, but it's the same question. A little
unfair. I am probably I'm very equal on them at this point. I don't know that I would prefer Dubs over Watson. I think Watson kind of got the raw end of the stick through training camp, and that may set him back forever, and he never fires at all. Who knows? But like, Watson has one of those profiles that people are going to fall in love with if he fires, and he doesn't have to be good. He just has to fire for a short amount of time because he's tied to Aaron Rodgers for the long term. And he's like, what is he, like 6'4", 6'5", and runs like a 4.4 or something like that.
Real big, real fast.
Like he's exactly what people fall in love with when they probably shouldn't. He is 6'4", 208 pounds, and he runs a 4.36. I was way off on the speed. I said 4.4. I apologize to the world that was understanding Christian Watson's physical gifts. I don't necessarily think he's good. I've never necessarily thought he was good. I think he's an okay prospect, and he's tied to Aaron Rodgers, and people are irrationally excited about these players tied to superstar quarterbacks. And therefore, Christian Watson is still a very exciting player to me. If people are selling low on Christian Watson, by the way, I'd be interested in buying if I can get him for like a mid to late second. Like, if people are down on him because they're looking at Allen Lazard scoring like, I don't know, 30 yards a game. And then I think he had like 100 this week though. So that was good.
He had a lot this week. Good for him. Yeah.
Good for him. Way to bounce back after 2 atrocious games. And then Romeo Dubs is also like got a lot of hype going. So I could see a little buy low window on Christian Watson. And here's the thing. It's not either or with Dubs or Watson. It could be both. And that's what's I think really exciting about buying into these rookie Packers wide receivers.
That's what I was so pumped about in my home league when I was able to draft both, because I don't usually draft Watson because he was going a little higher. But when he fell past ADP and I was able to get Watson and I was able to get Dubs, I was like, I mean, you never know, but I was like, it feels really unlikely that neither of these guys is A, going to fire, and B, is never going to look like they're firing enough to be a massive profit. Like it's just unlikely, right? It's either that or Alan Lazard's the alpha, and that's not the case. So.
That's definitely not what's going to happen. So we can rest assured that it's going to be one of Watson or Dubs and or both.